So today I'm going to be taking a look at the JLC Reverso. It is a watch that's been on my radar for a while. It's a little bit dressier, but that's what I tend towards, so let's get into the review.
We have a diameter of 26.1 millimeters, a lug to lug of 42, a height of 9.5, and a lug width of 19 millimeters. Some other general specifications for this watch: we're going to have a sapphire crystal on the front. They don't really state whether it has an AR coating. I'm going to assume it does, but all watches usually still have glitter on them anyways. We're going to have heat blued hour and minute hands there. We have a nice guilloche pattern in the middle. It is only 30 meters water resistant. Obviously, this is a Reverso, so it has the Reverso functionality. We're going to have a solid case back, and this is actually a quartz movement. Now, not a lot of love is paid to quartz movements, and luxury quartz by that matter either. It is a little hard to find exactly which caliber it is. There's not a lot of information out there. It's either going to be the 657, the 608, or something similar. They are decorated movements. They are, I believe, thermocompensated, and it is no just run-of-the-mill quartz movement. So taking a look at the dial of this watch, and this is Art Deco. This is classic. This is a dress watch, even though, it starts out, quote-unquote, as a sports watch. But as we can see, we have the outer ring here, or really outer square, which has these beautiful black Arabic numerals printed on this basically silver, almost kind of brushed / plated looking section. So moving into the inner dial, we see we have this minute track on the outside with the thicker marks being every 5 minutes. We also see we have very minimal text with Jaeger LeCoultre and then, or Jaeger LeCoultre, or however you want to pronounce it, and Reverso at the bottom there. We also have this beautiful guilloche pattern in the middle. It's like almost very gentle, curvy waves. Really, really detailed, really, really nice, really plays with the light. When we get into macro detail, you're going to be able to see just how fine and just interesting that pattern is. One thing I would like to note about the dial is basically, as you can see here, we have this kind of very bright silver, almost whitish middle section with this very dark, kind of more grayer, metallic looking outer section here. But depending on how you have the watch tilted, depending on how the light's hitting it, those will change back and forth. So now the outside there is whiter and the middle is grayer. It just goes back and forth just depending on the lighting, depending on what angle you have it on, depending on just, I guess, when you're looking at it. So that's something cool. It has a little dynamicism to it. And of course, the heat blued seconds hand or heat blued minute and hour hands come out to play every once in a while. So it really is a kind of very simply done dial, but a very nice one. So zooming up closer to the dial, you can really just see now how beautiful and fine that middle guilloche pattern is. It again, to me, looks kind of like a wave pattern. It is very, very gentle. There's a lot of depth to it. It really does dip down quite a lot. And depending on the angle, depending on where you're looking at it from, you can just kind of see how much depth it takes on. And overall, it's nice how just cut out and defined those little letterings are for Reverso and Jaeger. It just kind of looks very much purposeful. It looks sculpted out of the dial in a way, which I think is just a really nice touch. And the way the actual JLC logoing there is applied right above, I think looks pretty nice as well. Just looking a little more generally at the overall finishing, the printing of the minutes track, the text, the numerals here, there are no imperfections. The dial is perfectly nicely done. As you can kind of tell here, there is an actual kind of metallic brushing to the outer section of the dial here, which obviously gives it that grayer, darker, metalish tone in most lightings. As you can see here, the guilloche looks very much white silver, while the outside looks a more metallic dark gray. And like I was mentioning earlier, that does change. It does play with the light a lot, which is really nice. Get those really, really deeply blued hands. Depending on the light, just really comes to life. So overall, just a really, really nicely done, clean dial. As you can see really quickly with the numerals here, there is kind of almost a bulbousness to them. They are a little bit inky, a little bit dimensional, so it is nice that they're not just flatly printed. And the same kind of inkiness is used for those hour marks there, or minute marks rather. So nice little detail there. It is a well done dial. All the lines are very sharp and angular, and yeah, it just looks really nice, I think. So moving on to the case of this watch, and that is what brings this Reverso fame. It flips around. But kind of before we go into that, obviously we have a very, well, Reverso shaped watch. It is the icon. It is this square shape a little bit shorter on the sides, a little bit longer overall in length, creating a nice kind of compact but elegant sweeping case shape. As you can see here, we have these kind of 3 sections of lines going in the top and the bottom. Very Art Deco in its styling. Obviously, this came out during an Art Deco heavy period, and it's always kept that inspiration. We can see the beautiful turn down to the lugs there. They're very kind of stocky in the base because they are the case. They are where this mechanism of the flipping actually is housed. So it kind of has to be a little bit more sturdy, a little thicker to house that. And they taper off really nicely towards the end. The overall back of the watch is very, very flat. It's not uncomfortable by any means, but if you do go for like one of the larger models, it can become uncomfortable because it doesn't necessarily conform. It's kind of just meant to sit within your wrist. And if it's too large, you'll know. Looking here, we have a nice signed JLC clasp. One of the last things I just want to note about this case is basically, yes, it is a square case. Yes, it is in a sense geometrically styled, but for being a square watch, it has so many curves to it. It has the actual gentle curve of just the case side here. The lugs have this curved nature to them. Even the actual kind of whatever you would call this section, the case bottom, it isn't a flat, just hard surface. It has a gentle slope to it. So everything here just has a kind of gentle nature about it. It softens what would otherwise be a very harsh geometric shape. It makes everything rounder. It makes it more pleasing to the eye, I think, and also just more smooth to the touch, more easy to handle. Probably helps it wear better on wrist as well. So, doing what Reverso does, obviously it has a mechanism in here which allows it to flip. As you can see, there's just kind of like a detent that it falls into at the end of the case there, and it allows it to slide along this axis. You flip it around. This model here has a plain case back, which I'm not too crazy about. I mean, I'm fine with there being a plain case back, but with this one, after coming from something like Grand Seiko, I'd expect it to be a little bit more mirror polished. It does create quite a blurry image here and there. I mean, it's not bad by any means, but I expected a little bit more. As you can see here, that beautiful line is carried through the entire top portion and bottom portion of the case, creating a nice continuity. And we have this kind of nice stamped perlage pattern on the very case back here. On the surface, simple case, but it has all these very nice details of the curvedness, the Art Deco inspiration, the kind of obviously flipping mechanism that it has, that all kind of come together to create something that's really, really unique. So trying this watch on the wrist, earlier I was wearing my Zodiac Super Seawolf, and here we have the Reverso on my 6.5 inch wrist. And this is what's considered the medium case size or the Grand Tie case size. And personally, I think this is a perfect fit for my wrist. I believe the lug to lug was a 42. When you go up to the large case size, I believe that becomes closer to 47. So that is quite a large length to have on a watch that's supposed to be kind of this svelte, this clean, this kind of understated. And I think this is kind of where the sweet spot is, both in just general sizing and sizing for my wrist personally. As you can see, it just sits within the bounds really well. I think just the uniqueness of having a square watch is just something that's really, really interesting. From that view there, you can kind of just really see it does sit into the wrist very well. Obviously, the actual kind of curved parts of the watch aren't coming into contact with the wrist. It's really just this back section that houses the mechanism. Overall, it's not uncomfortable to wear at all. It doesn't dig. I think because all the curved surfaces on the sides, any flexion doesn't really meet with any jagged edges or sharp corners, which is a really, really nice touch. And overall, I think it's just a really, really classy piece. Obviously, can be a dedicated dress watch, but I think on more casual straps, it can just be kind of a fun everyday piece. And again, for having a mechanism that literally allows the watch to be flipped around, it is a very thin watch overall, wears very, very close to the wrist, and I think just looks really nice. And really quickly, the case back, very, very plain, just some brushing and some, JLC marking info, and having the classic JLC 100 hours control, basically stating how this was tested like crazy before it left the factory. And again, unfortunately, like most luxury watches, or at least every luxury watch I seem to come across, the lug width is 19 millimeters. Luckily, we have brands like Cheapest Needle Straps here with this kind of really nice hunter green vintage style leather stitching. Vario, this previous band that I showed on before, is by Veblenist. So we have all these other brands where you can find 19mm straps, but it is a little bit of a pain. Overall, for being from a brand literally called Cheapest NATO Straps, these leather straps I've experienced, they're not the highest of quality, but they definitely do the job. And they have quick release, which is fun. I think this dark green complements the watch really well. It clashes a little bit with the blue sometimes, but overall, I really like it. Green is my favorite color, so I'm a little biased, but I do think it works well on here. Here's a really cool combo. This is an alligator band by, it's either Tech Swiss or Swiss Tech, one of the two. I usually buy them off of Amazon. It has this really beautiful, kind of very intricate texture, kind of lots of lines going everywhere, lots of mix of darker and lighter colors. But I think the blue coloration just plays well with the white dial, with the seconds hands, or with the hour and minute hand. And yeah, I just like it. Here on wrist, you can see alligator adds some nice texture to the watch, a nice kind of pop of color as well. And yeah, I just think it matches really nicely. And overall, would this even be my channel if I did not try it on a rubber silicone strap? So here we have the Archer silicone strap. It is a 20mm instead of a 19, but you know, you just kind of squeeze it in there. Silicone's very flexible, so no problems there. Overall, this combo won't be for everybody, but I think it's a very, very fun combo, very, very summery. I think the white of the strap plays really well off of the nice guilloche in the dial, and of course, when it goes off axis, then it plays off the brush of the outer section. But I do think this watch strap matches well. I love it, and that's all that matters.
And here I just wanted to show how the minute hand ticks over because I didn't earlier. So going on to pros and cons, I think one of the biggest pros for me is just the overall design of the watch. The sizing is perfect, the proportions are amazing, the just overall look on wrist is completely different than any regular circular watch, which is just nice. It separates itself. It has that Art Deco heritage to it. It has just dressier nature, which I love. So all the design aspects, from the size to just the regular font used and to the lettering and the flipping mechanism, like all the design aspects of it I love. Other than that, I think the Quartz has a little bit of a cleaner dial than the regular mechanicals do. When you add in the sub-seconds, or you add in complications like the date or a retrograde something, you know, whatever, however complicated they get, I think the Quartz has some kind of simplicity, some kind of almost truer to nature kind of look to it that some of the mechanicals can't quite grab onto. And last but not least, I just think overall, this being a Quartz watch, the maintenance aspect of it is going to be a lot nicer. You don't have to worry even about whether it's running, because it really will be. You just have to worry about battery change every now and then. You should get the movement serviced every once in a while, but it's not going to be that, you know, consistent 3 to 5 years that you should do for a regular mechanical, which I think is really, really nice. And yeah, saves me money in the long run. So if I get the design and the quality there, and I get to spend less upfront and spend less over time, why not? So moving on to cons of this watch, and getting the biggest one out of the way, for most people, they will not like the fact that it's a quartz watch. For me, I don't care if it's quartz as long as it's well made. My first luxury watch was a Grand Seiko quartz. I have a Credo quartz right now, and now I have this JLC quartz in my collection. So quartz is just another movement to me. It is kind of secondary to the design of the watch, the feel of the watch, the make of the watch. And for me, this Reverso is made as well as any other Reverso. It looks as good as any other Reverso. I actually like the cleaner design a little more. So I have no problem with it being quartz, but I can see how some people just really want to go towards the mechanical, and there are mechanical options, thankfully. Moving on to regular other cons for this watch, it can be too dressy at times. I personally am fine with it. I'll use it for anything. You put it on like that white rubber strap I had it on, it makes it very playful. But for some, they might not find ways to wear it into their collection as easily. So for those, I just say, you know, if you really like the watch, just wear it. I mean, it doesn't need an occasion to be worn. It doesn't need to be dressed up to be worn. It is a watch. One, most people don't even notice it, and two, if you enjoy it, wear it. So one of the other main cons for me, both before getting the watch and after having it in, is the fact that it's a silver dial, not really a white dial. Obviously, you do get that color changing aspect to it, but for me, when I have a nice plain dress watch, I kind of almost want just a nice simple white dial, matches a lot of things, doesn't really stand out in any way. But with this one, a lot of the times you'll get that kind of very apparent silver to come out. And at first I kind of wasn't in love with it. I was like, I wanted a white dial. This one kind of looks a little bit like mundane in some ways, but when you add in that color changing aspect from the white to the gray, You add in how beautiful that guilloche looks pretty much at any time, no matter what. And the fact that I already have other white watches, I can deal with the fact that this has a silver leaning dial. And last but not least, as with most luxury watches, this has a dumb lug width, 19 millimeters. I don't know why, but it does. It sucks. Gotta go custom pretty much. So final thoughts on this watch, and it is one I've been wanting for a long time. Has it lived up to my expectations? Definitely. It doesn't wear like anything else. It just looks good on the wrist. It looks different than other watches that you're used to because it's not in a traditional shape. And the shape that it is was pretty much pioneered by JLC, which is amazing. The case fits amazingly. I think it looks great on wrist. It fits in very dressy environments very well, but it fits in casual environments just as well, I think. It doesn't look out of place with the jeans and a t-shirt. So I do really like the watch. I think if you've been looking for a JLC Reverso, it can be a lot more versatile than you think it is right off the bat. It doesn't have to be just a dress watch. And if you do end up getting a Reverso, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I have. It's a great watch. I hope you got something from the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another one.